Hey, so I'm Brittany. This is my first video, so probably not a lot of people are going to watch this, but I have something I wanted to talk about. I probably should have talked about this like last year, because this was when I was actually a problem. It's about a teacher that I had, and I'm going to say this now. The point of this video is that if you have a teacher or you do not agree with something that they're teaching, or you're thinking that they're teaching something that's harmful, or that they're not giving your classmates a good education, you need to go talk to someone about it, because this irritated me, but oddly enough, I didn't make the connection until recently, just how bad of a situation this was. So I'm in college now, this is my first year, but I took AP Lit last year at my high school, and we read Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. And so that book has a lot of debate over whether or not the main character was raped. And so, of course, as an AP Lit class, we're going to discuss this topic. And so, first I'm going to give you an overview of what happens. The main character's name is Tess, and there's this guy, Alec. And basically, she's walking home at night. She knows him. She's walking home at night. He stops by and is like, hey, want me to give you a ride? And she doesn't really want the ride, but it's dark, and she thinks she's probably safer if she gets a ride from him. So she goes with him. And he keeps trying to kiss her, and she shuts him down every time. She's like, I do not want to kiss you. And later on, he stops the carriage. She's a little like, what's going on? They go off into the woods for something. She falls asleep. And then he does stuff to her that results in a pregnancy and all that sort of thing. So he has sex with her. And I'm not really sure why there is a debate whether or not this was rape, because she was asleep. She could not give consent. But there's a debate. And so we're talking about this in my class, and I am making my point very clear that this was most certainly rape. She was asleep. She'd been saying no to him even kissing her, so obviously that means no to anything else. And my teacher is arguing against it, basically saying that at the period of time that this book was written, they didn't have a word for rape. Therefore, the idea does not exist. Therefore, there is no such thing. Which, for one thing, just because there's no word for it, which there was a word for it, just because there's no word for it does not mean the idea does not exist. English doesn't have a word for happiness at other people's pain, but that doesn't mean the word Schadenfreude doesn't exist. That doesn't mean there's not a thing. So, that was one of my problems. My other problem is that, it doesn't exist because it's not the idea or the word. The thing is consent still exists. And then I bring that up, and she makes the point that, well, at that period of time, only an explicit no means a lack of consent. So any silence, asleep, any of this is technically consent. And so that means that what he did to Tess is consensual. And so then I try to argue, well, he was trying to kiss her. She was shutting even that down. That means that was that was her saying no. That was her no to all of it. Because if she doesn't want to be kissed, she doesn't want anything else. And so then my teacher says that it has to be continual non-consent. So, she said no to the kissing, but she didn't explicitly say no to the sex. So apparently that makes it okay. And so already this is really, really frustrating. To make matters worse, we're going to write an essay on whether or not it was rape. And I had talked to some of my classmates because we knew about this beforehand. We knew we were going to be writing this. I talked to some of my classmates, and I found out what they thought. A couple of them thought it wasn't. But a majority of them did believe that it actually was rape. And so then we're going to write the essay on it. She's telling us about this, and then she says, but, I mean, if any of you guys write that it's rape, I'm going to mark you down because you're completely wrong. I'm going to, flunk you. And so, which is already, she's telling us we cannot write our opinion. It's an opinion paper, and we cannot write our opinion. And only 3 people in about a 30-person class actually wrote what they believed, because this is an AP class. These are students trying to get into good schools. We are trying to get into like top schools, and we're terrified. Like, we can't afford an F, because she had already given us Fs at the beginning of the year just to scare us, specifically to scare us. So we knew she would probably do the same thing. Like, if you didn't abide by her instructions, then she would flunk you. And so there were only 3 of us who actually were brave enough to stand up for what we believed in. And it was, and the problem is when you're writing an essay, an argument essay about what this interpretation is, you're writing it in and you're cementing that belief in your mind, regardless of whether or not you believe it yourself. It's still solidifying it because you're trying to make a strong argument. So you're trying to think of, what's something that I can say that will convince people that don't believe this, that this is true? And you are thereby convincing yourself. And so my problem is this teacher was literally teaching, she was using scare tactics, and she was literally teaching the people in my class that it is okay to rape if the girl's asleep, it's not rape. Because a lot of the times she didn't qualify it by talking about the time period. She would simply say, well, you need to continuously say no. Like, she wouldn't say at that time that was what a man would take as a lack of consent. She would just say, unless you say no, that it's a yes. That silence is yes. She wouldn't qualify it by the time period. So the people in my class weren't necessarily remembering that she meant specifically for that time period. So she's teaching these impressionable students that it is okay to sleep with someone because they're asleep, or because they didn't keep saying no. Once they stop saying no, then that means a yes. Like, there's no in between. Like, the instant they're quiet, then that's a yes. She was teaching the people in my class that it is okay to rape, because she wasn't putting any blame on the rapist. Every time we would talk about it, she would say, well, Tess shouldn't have gotten into the carriage with him. Well, Tess should have stayed awake. Tess should have been more careful. Tess should have done this. Tess should have done that. Tess should have done this. Every time Tess gets an opportunity to make a good choice, she always takes the bad path. And she was completely victim blaming. She wasn't putting a single ounce of blame onto Alec. She wasn't saying anything bad about him. It wasn't until the end of the book that she even considered that he was a bad person. To make matters worse, Alec was Tess's cousin. Okay, so I get at that period of time that was a little more normal, but still, that was a problem that Tess had. She was like, sorry, you're my cousin, I don't want to be with you. And he wouldn't take no for an answer. And my teacher ignored all of this. She viewed this book as Tess is the bad guy. Tess is the one who's making all these bad mistakes. Tess is the one who is now unlovable because she's been raped and because she's had a child and all this sort of thing. When Thomas Hardy's point was that your past does not determine who you are for the rest of your life. That the stuff that has happened to you does not determine who you can be. And my teacher is a lit teacher, completely misinterpreted the book, teaching this wrong interpretation and teaching the senior boys that it is okay to rape. And honestly, that teacher had done a bunch of other stuff during the year, and she should have been under review already. And all of us wanted to go report her, but we were all so terrified for our grades that we didn't. And I regret it every day. I wish I had gone day 2 when I actually realized that my teacher was this uncontrollable and possibly dangerous, because she stabbed herself in the forehead once because she couldn't get a hold of her class because they weren't under control. She was scared. We were scared. And we were scared for our grades. We were scared for our futures, because if we had to pass that class in order to graduate. So we couldn't afford to get a B or a C. We certainly couldn't afford to get a D. We couldn't risk our grades, and it's not a position that we should have been in. Like, I really do wish that I had gone and talked to someone about this. And like I said at the beginning of the video, if you are in a situation like this where your teacher makes you scared or makes you feel like you have to do certain things that you don't believe in or you don't agree with just to get the grades, just because you have to pass this class, go talk to someone, because I think this teacher is finally under review. But honestly, this is something that I feel like she should get fired for, because it's not okay. And in addition to all the other stuff that she was putting us through, it's not something students should have to go through. And I just want all of you guys to learn from my mistake of not talking to the administration sooner. And if you are in a situation like this, do something about it. And I'm pretty sure that if your teacher punishes you for doing that, go back to the administration and tell them about it, because that is not okay. Like, regardless of whether the administration actually does something about the teacher, if the teacher punishes you for reporting them, I'm pretty sure there would be consequences for the teacher for that. So I urge you, don't stand by having a teacher that makes you feel uncomfortable or makes you feel like you have to go against your own beliefs, because that's not what a teacher should be doing, especially in high school. Like, you might have a different situation in college because it's all like weird dynamics, but in high school and at a public school, that is not something that the administration should be allowing. So I wish you luck. Thank you to everyone who watched this. I know I don't have any followers yet, so I love you. I hope the rest of your school year goes great. I hope if any of you have problem teachers, that you do something about it, and you either you fight through what you're dealing with, or you get something done and you get rid of it. But honestly, if you don't feel like you can afford to do anything, that's okay too. I'm not like, I wish I had done something, but I don't want to put you in a position where you're never where it's not possible for you to do anything. I can understand that. So I love you guys. Thank you for watching this. I know this was a long video. Thank you. Bye.